It was supposed to be a happy evening. The smell of jollof rice and fried plantain filled the house, and Amara Chikazi sat quietly at the dining table, smiling shyly as her family sang happy birthday. She had just turned 26, another year of trying to prove herself. Her older sister, Ngozi, had flown in from the UK that morning. Everyone had been talking about her since she walked in. Her shiny designer bag, her perfect hair, her master's degree. She was the pride of the family, the one everyone compared Amara to. During dinner, Ngozi dominated the conversation, laughing about her London life and rolling her eyes when Amara mentioned her small design job. "So you're still drawing cartoons for pennies?" she said with a smirk. Their mother chuckled nervously, trying to keep the peace. Their father kept eating, pretending not to hear. Amara forced a smile, but her throat felt tight. Then Ngozi lifted her glass of wine and said loudly, "Happy birthday, Amara. May you finally do something useful with your life." The table erupted in laughter. Even her parents laughed, not realizing how cruel it sounded. Amara felt her face burn. The laughter blurred into background noise as she blinked back tears. She excused herself, quietly walking to her old bedroom, where the walls were still covered with her childhood sketches. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she wiped her cheeks and whispered to herself, "By next year, they'll see who I really am." That night, something in her heart shifted. The humiliation turned into fire. The morning after her painful birthday, Amara woke up with a decision burning in her chest. She was done being underestimated. She quit her low-paying design job that same week. Her boss looked shocked, asking, "Are you sure? There's not much out there." But Amara simply smiled. She didn't know exactly what she'd do next, but she knew she was done playing small. She moved all her things into her tiny apartment, and it wasn't fancy, cracked walls, a flickering bulb, and a small desk by the window, but it became her creative space. She started freelancing, taking small projects from anyone who would trust her. Sometimes she designed business cards for 5,000 Nigerian nairas. Other times she made flyers for local shops. Money was tight, but every project made her better. At night, while the city buzzed outside, Amara studied. She watched online tutorials on branding, marketing, and tech startups. She learned how colors, fonts, and stories could make people feel something. The more she learned, the more ideas started blooming in her mind. One day, she met up with her old friend Tolu, a brilliant coder who shared her passion for creativity. Over cold sodas in a roadside cafe, they came up with an idea to build something of their own. "Let's start a studio," Amara said. "One that makes African brands look bold and original." Tolu grinned. "Novamark Studios," he said. "A new mark for Africa." From that day, their small apartment became their office. They worked day and night, surviving on instant noodles and pure determination. They pitched to small businesses, fashion boutiques, tech startups, restaurants, sometimes getting rejected, sometimes landing a deal that kept the lights on. Amara designed logos that told stories, and Tolu built sleek websites that brought those stories to life. Slowly, their work started getting noticed. A local fashion label hired them to rebrand their look, and when that campaign took off online, new clients came calling. A fintech app, then a small airline, each project bigger than the last. Their designs stood out because they felt real, proudly African, bold, and full of heart. 6 months later, Amara looked around her tiny living room, now filled with computers, sticky notes, and a growing team of freelancers. She realized she was no longer the shy girl her sister modeled. She was running something real. Still, when she called home, her mother would ask gently, "Amara, are you still doing that drawing business?" Her father would mumble, "Just make sure you save something." Ngozi never called at all. Amara didn't bother explaining anymore. She knew they wouldn't understand, not yet. But every client email, every glowing review, every payment alert reminded her she was building something worth believing in. Late one night, she looked out her window at the lights of Lagos and whispered, "I'm not playing business. I'm building a future." Amara never forgot the night she and Tolu got the email from Palm Spring Beverages. It was late, and they were working on a client logo when the message popped up. She read it twice, hardly believing her eyes. One of Nigeria's biggest drink companies wanted Novamark Studios to handle their next branding campaign. She screamed so loud that the neighbors banged on the wall. Tolu rushed over, thinking something was wrong, but when he saw the email, he shouted too. They danced around the room like kids, laughing and crying at the same time. This was their chance, the kind of opportunity people dreamed about. For days, they planned every color, every slogan, every tiny detail. Amara wanted the campaign to feel fresh, bold, and proudly African, something that celebrated the country's energy and youth. They brought in dancers, street artists, and real people from Lagos to be part of the visuals. When the campaign finally launched, it exploded across social media. Billboards, TV ads, and Instagram reels. Everywhere people looked, they saw Palm Springs' bright new look and the Novamark logo in the corner. Within weeks, the company's sales skyrocketed, and everyone wanted to know who was behind the magic. Blogs wrote articles about Amara's authentic African creativity, and business magazines called her the new face of African design innovation. For the first time in her life, she saw her name trending online, not as someone's sister, but as someone who built something remarkable. After that, everything changed. Emails flooded in from companies wanting to work with Novamark, tech startups, fashion houses, real estate brands, even banks. Investors started reaching out too, offering funding to help them grow. Amara and Tolu finally moved out of the cramped Yabo apartment and opened a real office in Lekki Phase 1. Glass walls, bright lights, and a team of talented young designers who believed in her vision. Amara stood in that new office one morning, watching her team brainstorm around the conference table, and she felt tears sting her eyes. This was the dream she had whispered to herself on that painful birthday night, and it was real. When her story aired on a popular business TV show, her parents finally saw it. Her mother called in shock, saying, "Amara, you're on television. Everyone in church is talking about you." Her father, who used to stay silent during family dinners, simply said, "We're proud of you, daughter." But in the family group chat, Ngozi said nothing. No emoji, no comment, not even a congratulations. She just read the messages and stayed quiet. Amara didn't mind. She had learned that silence sometimes means someone is realizing what they lost when they underestimated. As she sat in her office, watching the city lights of Lagos reflect off the glass, she smiled to herself and whispered, "They see me now." A year had passed since that life-changing Palm Spring campaign, and Amara's life had completely transformed. Novamark Studios was no longer a tiny Yaba apartment project. It had grown into a thriving creative agency with a real office, a talented team, and clients lining up for their unique, proudly African branding. That Sunday, Amara decided to visit her parents for lunch. She arrived in a sleek black SUV, polished and gleaming in the Lagos sun. Her father, who had always been quiet during family conversations, froze when he saw her pull up. His mouth opened and closed a few times before he finally stuttered. You bought that?" Amara smiled politely and stepped out, her heels clicking on the driveway. Inside, the house smelled like her mother's famous pepper soup, and the dining table was crowded with relatives. Everyone paused when they noticed her, whispering among themselves. Then Ngozi walked in. Her hair was carefully styled, her clothes expensive-looking but a little too stiff. She had lost her corporate job abroad months ago and had been living off temporary gigs. She forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "So, you're really running a company now?" Ngozi asked, trying to sound casual but betraying a hint of disbelief. Her voice wavered ever so slightly. Amara nodded, calm and composed. "Yes," she said, smiling. "We're actually hiring now." The words hung in the air. The room went quiet. Even her mother, who usually tried to smooth over tensions, looked surprised. Her father just stared at her, his fork halfway to his mouth. The family had spent years treating her as the shy, struggling younger sister, the waste of space they used to joke about, and now here she was speaking with quiet authority about the company she had built from scratch. Amara noticed the tension in Ngozi's shoulders, the way her smile faltered as she realized the power dynamic had shifted completely. For the first time, it wasn't about comparisons, insults, or family gossip. It was about achievement, hard work, and a sister who refused to be underestimated any longer. Amara sat down politely, started passing the bowls of soup around, and kept the conversation light. But inside, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Pride and reality had met, and this time, reality had the upper hand. She could see the tiny flicker of respect forming in her father's eyes, and even Ngozi couldn't hide the mix of shock and grudging admiration. That lunch, filled with familiar smells and family chatter, felt different. Amara had arrived as herself, confident, successful, and unshakable. She no longer needed anyone's approval, and yet she carried herself with calm grace, letting her accomplishments speak louder than any words could. 2 weeks after that tense Sunday lunch, Amara was going through her emails in the Novamark office when her HR manager, Saad, knocked and handed her a thick envelope. "CEO, we have a new application for the marketing director position," Saad said. Amara took it, expecting another resume from some random candidate. Her eyes widened as she read the name at the top, Ngozi Chikazi. Her heart skipped a beat. Her older sister was applying for a position at her own company, and she had no idea Amara was the CEO. The resume looked polished, professional, exactly the type of applicant HR usually dreamed of, confident, educated, experienced. But the irony? Amara had built Novamark from nothing, and now the sister who once mocked her wanted in. Amara leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Should she call Ngozi and let her know the truth? Or handle it like any other candidate? The temptation to send a simple "sorry, we're not hiring" email was strong, but Amara wanted to do things differently this time. She called Tolu over, who was buried in code at his desk. "Tolu," she said, holding up the resume. "Should I tell her who I am, or interview her like any other candidate?" Tolu looked up, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Let karma do its work," he said. "She applied for this herself. Let her meet the CEO first. It'll be enlightening." Amara laughed softly. He was right. There was a strange satisfaction in letting her sister walk in thinking she was just another boss or HR employee. She straightened her blazer, adjusted her chair behind the CEO desk, and opened the calendar to schedule the interview. When she called Ngozi to confirm the meeting, she kept her voice calm and professional. "We've received your application. Let's meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. in our office," she said, deliberately keeping her tone neutral, betraying none of the emotions swirling inside. Hanging up, Amara felt a mix of nerves and excitement. This wasn't about revenge. It was about proving, once again, that she could handle anything with grace. She glanced at the city skyline from her office window and whispered to herself, "Let's see how this plays out." For the first time, she imagined her sister walking into Novamark without knowing the truth. It was going to be awkward. It was going to be tense. And most importantly, it was going to be a lesson, not just for Ngozi, but for Amara herself. She was ready. The next morning, the office felt charged, almost electric. Amara sat behind her desk, hands folded, a calm smile on her face. She was about to see her sister in a new light, and perhaps, finally, make her understand what it meant to underestimate someone. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of Novamark's sleek Lecky office as Ngozi stepped in, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. She had rehearsed her entrance, practiced her smile, and straightened her blazer more times than she could count. She was here to impress, to get the marketing director role she thought she deserved. But the moment she looked up, her confident facade faltered. Behind the CEO desk sat Amara, calm, composed, and in complete control. The sister who had once been mocked as a waste of space was now the one holding the power. Ngozi's jaw dropped. Her carefully crafted words vanished from her mind. You, she whispered, barely audible. Amara's lips curved into a small, polite smile. "Welcome to Novamark," she said softly, gesturing to the chair across from her. "Please have a seat." Ngozi's legs felt like jelly as she sank into the chair. She tried to straighten her posture, to look confident, but inside, panic bubbled up. For the first time in years, she felt small. Amara opened the interview folder, pretending to study Ngozi's resume with the utmost seriousness. "So," she began, "let's talk about your experience. You've had impressive positions abroad. Can you tell me how you handle teamwork, especially in challenging situations?" Ngozi nodded, trying to sound professional. "Yes, of course. I usually take the lead, ensure deadlines are met," her voice wavered. Amara raised an eyebrow, not unkindly, just observant. "And humility?" she asked. "How do you handle moments when someone else's idea is better than yours?" The question hit Ngozi like a lightning bolt. She fumbled, words tumbling out. I listen, of course. I try to adapt," she trailed off, realizing the irony. This was the sister she had belittled for years, and now she was the one being measured, evaluated, under Amara's calm, discerning gaze. Amara continued with the interview, keeping her tone formal, professional. Every question, every nod, every scribble on the notepad reminded Ngozi that the power dynamic had shifted completely. The girl she had mocked, ignored, and underestimated had become a leader, one who commanded respect simply by being herself. Ngozi felt a mix of shock and admiration, tinged with embarrassment. She had come in thinking she was walking into an opportunity to shine, but instead, she was facing a lesson she hadn't expected. By the end of the interview, Ngozi sat in silence for a moment, her mind racing. Amara smiled politely, closing the folder. "Thank you for coming," she said. "We'll be in touch." As Ngozi left the glass-walled office, her head slightly bowed, she realized one thing. The sister she had underestimated for years was no longer the same. And in that moment, she felt the weight of every word she had ever spoken, every insult, every laugh at Amara's expense, and understood, finally, what it meant to face someone who had grown beyond your judgment. After the interview, Amara stood and gestured toward the glass doors. "Let me walk you out," she said softly. Ngozi followed, her heels clicking nervously against the office floor, a stark contrast to the confident stride she had rehearsed in her mind before arriving. The elevator ride down was quiet, filled only with the faint hum of the building's lights and the soft whir of machinery. Once they reached the lobby, Amara stopped and turned to face her sister. She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Last year," she began, her voice gentle but steady, "you said I was a waste of space. Funny how time changes the view, doesn't it?" Ngozi's eyes widened, and then a wave of shame and regret washed over her. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. I didn't mean it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I was jealous. I didn't know how to handle it, you being different, chasing your own path while I was busy comparing myself to you. Amara nodded slowly, her expression softening. I understand, she said, and I forgive you, but forgiveness isn't a job offer. The words hit Ngozi with the weight of truth. It wasn't punishment, it was reality. Amara's success wasn't charity. It was hard-earned, earned through sleepless nights, sacrifices, and unwavering determination. There was a moment of silence as the two sisters looked at each other. Ngozi's usual confidence had melted, replaced with vulnerability. Amara extended her hand. I hope you find your space now, she said, and use it better. Her eyes held warmth, but also firmness, a clear boundary that couldn't be crossed by apologies alone. Ngozi took her sister's hand, trembling slightly, and squeezed it. There was gratitude in her eyes, but also understanding. Respect and humility had finally arrived. I will, she said softly. Thank you, Amara. Amara gave a small smile and released her hand. She stepped back, letting her sister gather herself. Ngozi nodded, wiped her tears discreetly, and turned toward the elevator. This time, she walked with a quiet awareness, not arrogance, not entitlement, just the humility that comes when someone finally realizes the consequences of their words and actions. As Amara watched her sister leave, she felt a calm sense of closure. She didn't need her sister to praise her, apologize, or even understand completely. What mattered was that she had stayed true to herself, handled the situation with grace, and turned a painful memory into a lesson for both of them. That day, Amara realized something important. Success isn't just about money, awards, or recognition. It's also about dignity, forgiveness, and knowing when to show kindness, even when someone once doubted your worth. She straightened her blazer, returned to her office, and smiled quietly to herself. She was free, empowered, and finally at peace with the past. Word spread quickly through the extended family after Amara turned down Ngozi's application. Phone calls came in, messages pinged in family WhatsApp groups, and relatives whispered to one another. Serves her right, some said. Finally, she's learning a lesson, others muttered. Amara heard about it, of course. Her mother hesitated before bringing it up, and even distant cousins seemed to know. But surprisingly, the gossip didn't thrill her. She had imagined it might feel like a sweet victory, a chance to savor her sister's humility. Instead, it felt hollow. Amara realized she didn't want petty satisfaction or approval from those who had once doubted her. She wanted something bigger, a way to use her success for good, to inspire others who had been overlooked or underestimated. So she turned her attention outward. She began mentoring young female creatives in Lagos, meeting them in co-working spaces, coffee shops, and even virtually. She taught them about branding, storytelling, and the business side of design, but most importantly, she taught them to value themselves. Your worth isn't measured by anyone else, she told them over and over. Believe in your ideas, and someone else will too. Her efforts grew into a campaign she called Design Your Worth. Through social media, workshops, and short online videos, the movement spread quickly. Soon, women across Africa were sharing their designs, their stories, and their successes under the campaign's hashtag. Amara watched as young women who had once doubted themselves post their first logos, launch their first websites, or pitch their own businesses, and she felt a deep, satisfying pride. The momentum even took her beyond Nigeria. Invitations arrived from other countries, asking her to speak at conferences and summits. One of the biggest invitations came from an innovation summit in Nairobi. She stood on stage, addressing a packed hall of young entrepreneurs, leaders, and creatives, and shared her journey. From a shy designer mocked at family dinners to the CEO of a thriving company. She spoke about resilience, authenticity, and the power of believing in oneself. The applause was thunderous, and as she looked out at the faces before her, Amara felt a profound sense of purpose. She wasn't just running a successful business. She was helping shape the next generation of women leaders across Africa. She had reclaimed her power, but not for revenge, not for status, and not for recognition. She had reclaimed it to lift others, to show that strength, vision, and dignity could coexist with kindness. That evening, after the summit, Amara sat in her hotel room overlooking Nairobi's skyline. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from mentors, journalists, and colleagues. She smiled, thinking about how far she had come. Turning down her sister's application had been a moment of clarity, a small act of self-respect. But building something that inspired countless others? That was the real triumph. Months passed, and life at Novamark Studios kept moving at a fast pace. Amara had immersed herself in projects, mentorship, and her Design Your Worth campaign, and she hardly thought about the past anymore. Not the old insults, not the family drama. Then one afternoon, a plain envelope arrived at her office. Her name was written neatly on the front in familiar handwriting. She opened it carefully and unfolded the letter inside. Her eyes scanned the words, and her heart skipped a beat. You didn't just build a company. You built yourself. I'm proud of you. It was from Ngozi. The letter continued, full of honesty and humility. She admitted how wrong she had been, how envious, and how seeing Amara's growth had inspired her. At the bottom, tucked inside, was a sketch, her first design in years, simple, raw, and full of potential. It was a gesture of apology, but also a spark of renewed creativity. Amara felt a smile spread across her face. The years of rivalry and hurt didn't vanish overnight, but this letter was different. It wasn't a demand, it wasn't competition, it was recognition. Amara picked up her phone and called Tolu. She wants to collaborate, she said. Not as an employee, but as an equal. Tolu raised an eyebrow, then grinned. About time. Let's see what kind of magic you two can make together. Amara invited Ngozi to the office. The first meeting was tentative, a mixture of nervous smiles and polite small talk. But as they looked over the sketches and brainstormed ideas, a new energy filled the room. Amara realized that what had been broken could now be rebuilt stronger, a relationship rooted in mutual respect, not past hurt. Together, they came up with an idea for a mentorship platform for women in business. They called it Rise Sisters Africa. The platform would connect young female entrepreneurs with experienced mentors, provide workshops, and share stories of resilience, creativity, and leadership. Amara and Ngozi poured their experience, insight, and passion into the project, and soon the platform launched with enthusiastic response from women across Nigeria and beyond. The first success story came from a young woman in Ibadan who had struggled to launch her small clothing line. She joined Rise Sisters Africa, received guidance, and in just a few months, her business was growing steadily. Stories like hers multiplied quickly, creating a ripple effect that reminded Amara why she had started this journey in the first place: to create opportunities and inspire others. One evening, after a long day of planning the next mentorship series, Amara and Ngozi sat in the office, sipping coffee and laughing about old family memories. Amara looked at her sister and realized how far they had both come. They were no longer competitors or rivals. They were partners, united by shared purpose, creativity, and a deeper understanding of one. For the first time, Amara felt a sense of complete peace. Success wasn't just about building a company anymore. It was about building connections, healing old wounds, and using her journey to lift others. And now, with her sister by her side, the possibilities felt endless. Exactly 1 year later, Amara stood on the rooftop of Novamark Studios, the Lagos skyline stretching endlessly behind. The evening air was warm, carrying the hum of the city below, and the rooftop was decorated with strings of lights, balloons, and colorful banners celebrating her birthday. This time there was no awkward tension, no whispers of judgment, only laughter, cheers, and the soft clinking of glasses. Ngozi stood beside her, holding a cake carefully decorated with vibrant icing. "Happy birthday, CEO," she said softly, her voice sincere. There was no teasing, no superiority, just admiration. Amara smiled and shook her head with a small laugh. "No speeches this time, please," she said, making the crowd laugh along with her. As everyone clapped, fireworks erupted over the city, painting the night sky in bursts of red, gold, and blue. The lights reflected in the glass walls of the office below, in the windows of neighboring buildings, and even in the eyes of everyone gathered around. It was a celebration not just of another year of life, but of everything she had built: the company, the campaigns, the mentorship, and the courage to rise above doubt and humiliation. Amara closed her eyes for a moment and whispered to herself, "A waste of space? No, I just needed to build my own." The words carried a quiet power. She didn't need validation from anyone anymore. She had created her own place in the world. Looking out over the Lagos skyline, she felt only peace and pride. The city lights twinkled like stars beneath her, and in that moment, Amara knew she had not only changed her life, but had also inspired others to see their work. She smiled, took a deep breath, and let the fireworks light up the night, a symbol of triumph, growth, and the unstoppable force of believing in oneself.